variety of colors is, I think, what is a good selling point for these, because you can achieve so many different colors. You might find that you unleash a creative side of yourself when it comes to making your candles that you just happen to really enjoy. Hey everyone, we're going to start things off today by playing a quick little game. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Let's go ahead and play again. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, that one was a little bit more subtle, so let's do it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Chances are in each one of those, one of them caught your eye first. Now that's not a 100% rule, and it's not going to apply to everyone, but for the most part, those results are going to apply pretty consistently to most people. Now I know what you're thinking, okay, we know what this video is about, we saw a little bit of the thumbnail, a little bit of the title, so you may be thinking, all right, we get it. Color grabs some attention. But it's not just about color, it's about contrast. Human beings, our eyes, the way our brains and senses work, we pick up on things that are different, something that grabs our attention, something that our eyes can easily pick up and then quickly send those signals to our brain to recognize something. That's what visual appeal is all about. So this video isn't really about discussing whether to dye your candles or not. In fact, I have another previous video that does tackle that question in a little bit more detail. This video is really to talk about if you're using color or considering using color, some things to think about, and we're going to be looking at some new dyes on the market that I have tested myself thoroughly, and I want to provide my feedback on those as well. In fact, what is driving this specific video is I'm going to be talking about reviewing some of the new candle dyes that I've used from a supplier in the market and letting you know my thoughts about those dyes, what I think about the color, honest feedback about the richness, as well as using the dyes themselves. More on that later. But in doing that review, I'm going to be talking about how to use some of these dyes and some tips and tricks to using them, things to watch out for, pros and cons to coloring your candles, and so on. But to really keep this video kind of structured so I don't just ramble all over the place like I probably am already, we're going to break it down into two sections. I'm going to first talk about these dyes, show you what I'm talking about, show you some examples of candles that I've had made using these dyes, what I think about the color accuracy as well as the richness of them. And then you want to stick around to the second part because I'm going to talk about actually the way these dyes are sent and how you're supposed to use them out of the bottle. Because like I mentioned before, different dyes come in different types of bottles and different ways of using them. So that's the brief summary. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Wade here with Black Tie Barn Candle Company. If you are new to the channel, I would encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel. We cover a lot of different topics. I'm glad you stopped by. Hopefully you decide to stick around longer by subscribing below. And if this is your first time here, leave me a comment in the comment section below so I know that you are new to the channel. All right, so let's get back to today's topic. So the candle dyes that we're going to be reviewing today are from Nature's Garden. I have used their previous dyes, but in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the newer line of candle dyes they have called their nature-friendly dyes. Now, there's two reasons I wanted to do a review on these specific dyes. One is, well, they're just new dyes, and I want to see how these dyes actually perform compared to other dyes I've used before. But also number two, it is great if you are looking to stay in that kind of clean, eco-friendly type of theme or niche for your candles. They're not the only company out there with a nature-friendly or eco-type style dye, but these are ones that I'm going to be reviewing today. Nature's Garden did send me four different colors for free to try of these new dyes. I want to say it was black, blue, red, and green maybe? That sounds about right. Four kind of common, your core colors. But you guys know me. Anyone that's been around this channel for a while knows that I don't like to just scratch the surface, and I don't want to do, high level reviews of just a small sample size. I like to review it all. So instead of just testing and reviewing those four dyes, I bought all of the dyes. I believe that was 23 to 25 different dyes. I'm not entirely sure, but it was definitely at least 23. So one of every single color. I bought their 1 ounce bottle of every single one of them. And I think the range price was around $5 a bottle. So hopefully the testing that I did and the review and feedback I'm going to provide in this video is something you guys enjoy and maybe find helpful. So if you take a quick glimpse behind me, you'll see several candles here, particularly on this side. I think you'll see more of the colors as this shelf is fairly bare at the moment. These are my winter seasonal ones, so that's been tough to keep stock. About half of the candles behind me are colored with these new Nature's Garden dyes. And then the other half are colored with various other dyes that I use. And I was confident enough in using them that I actually put them in my own product. So I want you to know that this is an honest feedback video. I always give honest reviews and honest feedback on anything sent to me. Yes, sometimes I receive free product to check out and review on the channel, but that's with the purpose of an honest review. You know, companies that send products for people to test out, they want your honest opinion. They're wanting you to provide real feedback as someone in the industry that uses those products. That's what makes their products better. That's what really helps out that company. And there's also times that I absolutely love the products myself. So not only am I doing an honest review and feedback of them, I will also incorporate those products or those materials into my line of products. I've done fragrance oil reviews videos on the channel before from several different companies, and I've kind of shown you that I'm not just reviewing them because they're sent to me, that I actually go out and buy these products. I had fragrance oil sent to me for free to review, and then I showed me on my checkout page buying about $2,000 worth of those oils. And the reason I'm doing that is to show you that I review all these products with confidence. And if I don't like something about them, I will tell you I don't like something about them. But if I do like something about them, it's true. It doesn't mean I'm doing that because I have some kind of bias towards the products or the company. What I'm basically trying to say is all my reviews are honest. Okay, that was long-winded, but I did have someone ask me about that in the comment section not too long ago, so I wanted to make sure that that was clear. Okay, so I started off the video showing you a couple different products. Now, one of them was not dyed and the other one was dyed. Now, just as human nature, we're usually drawn to something that stands out, something that's got contrast, something that's unique, something that's colorful. It's easier for our eyes to gravitate towards something that catches their attention. Same thing even when I showed the pink one. Now, I intentionally showed one that was a little less obvious of a distinction between the two, just to show you that the amount of contrast and the amount of color makes a difference as well. And then lastly, I also showed you one that was blue, I don't know if you noticed on that one, but I actually switched hands just to kind of prove that your eyes will follow the color, even if they're used to looking in a certain direction. So the point of that was not to try to convince you that you have to use color to dye your candles. As I mentioned before, I use a lot of dye in candles, and then I have a lot of candles that are not dyed at all. Sometimes just to match the name, like in this case, I don't dye this one. This is a clean cotton one, but I also have another line of candles that I do not dye. However, and I've mentioned this before, typically at shows or on my website, in general, sales of my colored candles typically are much better than my non-colored candles. Now, there are other factors. It could be the shape of the candle, it could be the size, it could be the price, it could be the label. There are certainly other factors, and this is not some kind of hard, fast rule. But in my experience of making candles for 10 to 12 years now, colored candles have always done better for me. And so that is why I continue to use them in my line, even though they do add some complexity to candle making, and they can be messy, which we're gonna talk about here later in this video. Now, I did mention though, it's not just about the color, it's about the contrast. When I'm at an event or on my website, everyone typically gravitates toward the candles that grab their attention, that grab their eyes, and that is the ones that are with color or contrast. Again, if you have jars that have color or contrast and you don't even see the wax, then certainly that's obvious an exception where you don't necessarily need colored dye or colored wax to grab attention. It could be something else doing the same job. Now I'm going to be showing some footage throughout here that shows you some of the products I'm making with these dyes. So you can see a little bit of what they look like in the process and also the finished results, although I've shown you some already. Everything I've shown you so far has been dyed with these new Nature's Garden nature-friendly dyes. And I should also say that the wax type you're using will have an effect on the color and the richness and the hue of these dyes. So as I get ready to talk about the actual dyes here, the specific dyes we're going to be reviewing, I want to make sure that everyone understands that in all of these products that I've tested these dyes was a 50-50 paraffin soy candle. So 50-50. The reason I do that is the same reason I do it with fragrance oils. It's a happy medium, and it's a very popular type of blend that a lot of candle makers use. So if I was just using 100% soy, most of your colors are going to be more of a pastel, lighter, muted color. If I was using straight paraffin or palm, for example, the colors would be a lot darker, richer, more vibrant. So I wanted to use something in the middle, and that's why I went with the 50-50 Parasoy. That gives a pretty good indicator of what we're working with here and the quality of these dyes. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of these colors one by one, but we're going to kind of break them down into different hues. In case you're wondering, I've got the tray in front of me of all the dyes that I purchased from Nature's Garden and talk about each of them in different shades or different hues. So we're going to talk about all the reds together and then the blues and the greens, blues and purples even, yellows and orange. So all of those we're going to break into categories, but not necessarily talk about them individually unless something uniquely needs to be mentioned about a specific color. So we're gonna start off with the greens. Now I'm only holding up 2 here, but there's actually 4 different greens, I believe, that I purchased and tried. And again, I tried to purchase one of every single color that they offered in this new line of dyes. One thing I like about this line is that there are lots of different variations of each hue. So there's not just a standard green or hunter green, for example. They have a hunter green, a forest green, a sea green, and a melon. And they're all different, definitely different. And then you can use each of them individually, or you can mix them together to create a lot of different cool colors. So as a quick example, and I won't do this with every one of them, but here's a few examples of different shades that I made. So this is a Fraser fir, that's kind of a light green, and then I've got a richer green that's a mistletoe. I've got sort of this blue green that's a frosted spruce. I've got an oak moss and amber that is actually my favorite green. So there's a lot of different shades you can make with each of these different colors, and you just have a lot of fun experimenting with them. As you can see, I did not have any issues getting good color, good richness, good vibrancy in any of these colors. And then next category would be the blues. Now I'm gonna say blues plus purple and violet. So there are several of these as well. As far as the purples go, there was a purple and a violet. And then there was also a blue and navy blue. Again, I mentioned sea green, which was kind of a blue-green, and then also a turquoise. Now, I gave you an idea of what blue can do already, but I have some other examples. But you can also make kind of a light sky blue, and then this is the most interesting one to me. So another one of the dyes in the blue category was called turquoise. Now, this was made with that, and it's a very, very light, very, very light shade of blue. I mean, so light that I had to use 4 to 6 drops to even start getting any color to show up in the wax. Now, I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound like a good thing, but again, you get so much control with some of these dyes, so that turquoise is not something I would use very often, right? It's something I would use in very specific circumstances when I was looking for a very, very light blue or something unique. You know, this is my Blitzen Breath candle, so I wanted this to look like frost, and it's probably showing up on the camera brighter, more vibrant than it actually is in person. It's a very, very light, kind of breathy looking color. So turquoise was perfect for that because it is very, very light. And one thing I should say too is on the website, when you're looking at candle dyes, you're getting to see kind of a digital blot of what that color looks like. But you ever have to realize that the color casting from your screen is very different than what you'd see in real life, both in the bottle, also mixed in wax. And so it's generally going to be not as vibrant once you start using it. And so even though turquoise sounds like it should be a bright, almost kind of teal, bright color, it's not in this case. It's a very, very light color, but it allowed me to do something cool, a color I've never been able to achieve before. I did not use too much of the purple. It was pretty straight up, both the purple and the violet was, but I did not do a ton of testing with it, to be honest. And I don't know that I even have anything to show an example of, because at least this time of year I don't have a lot of purple candles. Next, we're going to talk about the yellows. Yellows, ivories, and golden honey. I'll put those all together. I'm leaving out orange for a specific reason. I think the yellow is pretty standard. Yellow is yellow, just like it is for most suppliers. The more you use of it, the brighter or more vibrant that yellow gets, but it generally starts off a little light, and there was nothing abnormal about the yellow. The ivory, I didn't really like the ivory too much. I found the ivory to be more yellow than kind of a light cream or light brown color. And maybe that's just me comparing it to what I'm used to, but the ivory that I normally use creates a really nice kind of cream, kind of like ivory tusk color, right? And in this case, this ivory did not do that, so I did not end up using much of this ivory at all. But if that's not what you're expecting or what you're used to, or comparing it to something like I was, then you might be perfectly happy with it. Golden honey I did use a little bit of. I believe I used the golden honey when I was making a snickerdoodle or Christmas cookies or something like that. And it was kind of similar to gingerbread as well, which for one reason or another, I have that in the browns, but gingerbread and golden honey were very, very close. So I'm going to talk about orange really quick. Orange by itself is orange. No complaints. It came out looking orange. Most oranges are either a little bit on the yellow side or a little bit on the brown side, but once you add enough, you start getting that normal orange color. And if you look behind me, hopefully you can see it. I've got a pumpkin on the left side that is a good kind of orange color, right? So it by itself does a good job. But to be honest, where I mostly use orange is with my reds. And I want to explain the reds, which is the next category. Red is always a very difficult color for all candle makers to use, or at least try to get. They're trying to get a red, but red dye doesn't ever really make red wax or red candles. You gotta do a lot of work to try to get it red. And one thing that a lot of candle makers do is add more and more red drops to get it to change from pink to red. but you don't really want to do that. Reds can start clogging your wicks because you're adding so much dye to it. I like to stay under 10 drops per pound. That's kind of a general rule I've always followed. And if you start adding too much, it can clog your wick and really make it hard for your candle to even burn or perform well at all. But most reds aren't red, right? It takes a lot of dye to get that rich red color. Most of the time it comes out as pink or magenta or something. I'm gonna kind of make a sweeping statement about all the reds here. For anyone looking to try to get a real red color, take whatever red dye you have, whether that be red or magenta or burgundy or whatever other color it might be, and then you just mix that with a little bit of orange. So you'll have to experiment based off of your wax and which hue of red you're using. Sometimes it only takes a couple drops of orange to maybe 10 to 20 drops of red, for example, or 1 drop of orange to 9 drops of red. It can vary. I can't really give you a hard answer on that, but the key to getting red is to simply mix a little bit orange with whatever red dyes you have. That will help you get a real red without having to use too much dye. That being said, it can still take a lot more dye than you might otherwise use with your other colors. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that some dyes, particularly some of your reds and browns, are a much more heavy dye. So the drops are thicker. It's a thicker, richer dye. And by that I don't mean the color, I mean the actual liquid is a thicker liquid. So for example, the magenta in this particular line of dyes did give me the best, most richest red color, but it was also a very, very thick drop, a very, very thick liquid. And so to be really careful, I was actually nervous the first time I was using it. Most of the other drops are much thinner compared to the magenta, and watching the magenta drop in, I was thinking, man, this is a little concerning. And I actually did run into a couple issues where I used too much of the magenta. So dyes can definitely cause some problems if you use too much. So anyone that does want to try these dyes out, the magenta for me gave the most richest red, especially when I mixed it with an orange, but you don't want to use too much of it because it is a really thick, like physically a thick liquid. And also, just to show an example here of a slight hue, a slight change in the vibrancy of a color you can make by just changing up the ratio of your reds to your orange or whatever else you're using. This is my Cranberry Fire, which is kind of a deeper, almost kind of brick red. I don't know how well the camera will show it, but again, this is meant to be a kind of a spicy red, so almost kind of a darker cranberry type red. And then this one is one of my Christmas Eve candles, and it's actually a brighter red. Once again, I don't know if the camera will show a difference, but that's just by mixing up the ratio a little bit and kind of showing that you can achieve different results just depending on how much you want to use of a particular dye. And you might notice behind me there's a few other reds as well, and they're all slightly different. There are a few other reds in there as well, reds or oranges. Spiced Pumpkin was a really cool color. That was a unique kind of reddish orangish brown. I ended up using a lot of it for my pumpkin apple butter candles. And then they had a cinnamon, which was really good too. So it was kind of that color I just showed you I did for the Cranberry Fire. So it's a brownish red. But yeah, so this good selection of colors I really, really enjoyed. Burgundy was another one. Now, interestingly enough, before I leave the reds, is there is one just called red. So you would have thought that would be the one that I'll just start with, right? To get my red color. It's actually more pink than some of the others. It was harder to get a red color with the red dye than it was mixing the burgundy or the magenta with a little bit of orange. Now you could have mixed the red with an orange as well, but I was still getting a little bit more pink. But that could have been just the wax I was using. Again, it will vary a little bit for everyone. Again, in some of the other liquid dyes I use from another company, to get red, I don't use their red either. I actually mix a burgundy, a magenta, and an orange with those as well. So I think it's a fairly consistent thing to say that it can be tricky to get red, and then it might be using the colors you don't necessarily expect. Now, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on browns. As I mentioned, there is a brown, just straight up brown, and then there is a spiced pumpkin. There was that gingerbread, the ivory. Those are all kind of brownish colors, different shades, but there's really nothing specifically to talk about on the browns other than they worked fine. Now, for anyone that's wondering how I come up with my colors, one comment I get all the time is, how do I get my candles to look so rich? How do I get my colors to look that vibrant? Well, first and foremost, as I mentioned before, part of it's going to depend on your wax. If you are using a soy wax, it's going to be harder to get a rich color just because of the nature of soy wax. If you're using a straight paraffin, it's going to be very easy to get rich, vibrant colors And if you're using anything in between, you're gonna get variation. You're gonna get different shades depending on your specific wax. And there's not too much you can do to really affect the vibrancy so much, but you can affect the colors, the hues, and then if you do enough testing, you can kind of push the envelope on how much dye you can use without affecting the performance of your candle. And it all comes down to testing. Now, as I've shown you in previous videos, I like to experiment with colors in the testing process. So I will start with my wick and my fragrance and my wax and make sure I have all that dialed in. And then as I continue to do further tests, I will start experimenting with colors. I use little wax paper plates as I'm adding colors in, I will sample what it looks like, and I just keep tweaking as I go. I just have fun with it. And I think that's the key, is just have fun with it. Now, for anyone that's been struggling on how to mix and match colors, and maybe you're not really artistic by nature and colors just really aren't your thing, I would encourage buying one of these pocket color wheels. I don't know if I've got one linked already in my videos descriptions in the past. If I don't, I will try to find this and try to link it for you. But on one side, it's got your main colors, and then if you add a certain color to it, you just turn the wheel and you can see what color you would get by adding to it. And then on the other side, it's got different hues of each one of your colors. So the wheel is double-sided for different purposes, but it's just called a pocket color wheel. I don't use this very much anymore, I'll be honest, because I've been doing this for so long, I kind of know what to mix with what to kind of get the result I'm after. But for starting off, this was great. I use it all the time. I'm thinking, well, what happens if I add this to that? Give me an idea of what that's going to look like. Now, I do have to say that this is meant for basic core colors, and this is color in its purest form. Okay, this doesn't know what wax you're using. This doesn't know how many drops or anything like that. And of course, it doesn't know the quality or the concentration of your oils. So this is just to give you an idea, technically or theoretically what mixing certain colors together would give you. But you'll definitely want to test for yourself, because you're going to get different results than just based off of a guide, a color wheel. Now, I did want to talk about how to use these dyes. Now, you're probably thinking, what do you mean? You just add your dye to your wax. They're just drops, right? But different suppliers offer different types of containers or tubes or bottles for your dye, and the way you add the dye to your wax varies. For example, ones that I'm used to, that many of you are used to, they kind of have that plunger that you spin off, and it's just got a dropper attached to it. That is a great option. These ones come with just actual flip caps that, I'll just show you here. Flip the cap, and then I don't want to do it in here obviously, but then you just tip it and squeeze the bottle to make it drop out. Now, this honestly comes down to personal preference. There are pros and cons to each. I know this sounds like something like, who cares? It's just the way you add the drops. But anyone that's used color before knows what I'm talking about. Some are messier than others, and it takes some getting used to, and making a mess out of dyes, you're not going to avoid it. So the first thing I would do is wear gloves. I should be using them right now, just touching these. So whether you're gonna like the flip cap where you just tip the bottle, or the dropper type, I don't know. That's gonna be totally up to you. I have made a mess out of both of them. So this is one example. This bottle is completely just, it's nasty, right? I mean, the dropper itself, I shouldn't even be touching this right now without gloves. And it's because it's very easy. Like, once you get dye on something, especially on the cap or the bottle itself, you're not getting it off, and it makes a mess. And so you just have to be very, very careful with either option. Now, with the flip cap, you'll see some of these are still perfect. I have made no mess whatsoever, and it's great. You flip the cap, you tip it over, and when you're done, you flip the cap again. I mean, it's pretty simple. But if you look at a few of these, green starting to make a little bit of a mess. Yellow, the entire cap's turning yellow. Blue, what's going on here? Black, look at this one, okay? These are probably still in better shape than my other ones, but I've also haven't used these near as long. The trick on these is you need to be assertive. If you decide you're gonna tip that bottle and squeeze out a drop, do it. Don't hesitate. Don't start to squeeze and then pull back, because what happens is the drop, instead of releasing, it actually kind of stays, and then it collects inside under the cap. It's hard to explain, but if you're gonna add a drop, let the drop go. Be diligent. If you're gonna add a drop, add a drop. Now with the droppers, that's less of a problem. It's more of making sure that the dropper stops dropping when you're ready to put it back in the bottle. So when you have it out and then try to put it in, that's always when I make my mess, always. So long story short, it really comes down to preference. If you get comfortable using one or the other, you're probably just going to prefer that one. I can replace droppers, that's no problem, right? But it's very, very easy to also just replace the cap. So let me show you how these show up. They come with the bottle with the normal cap on them, and then you're given the cap to put on that is the flip top. Okay, so if you do start to make a mess on these bottles, it's very easy. Just get a new cap from them. So all in all, what did I think about these dies? I actually really like them. I was hesitant. I've used my current dies for so long that I've never really considered switching away from them. And I don't know that I ever will, to be honest, entirely at least, because I have so many recipes based on them. So even if I did want to switch, it would be kind of a pain. But I also have no issues with my current dies. However, I've tried a lot of dies in the past, and they're fun to tinker with and play with, but I never really liked them enough to use them in a lot of product. These are the first ones I've really tested recently that I was comfortable enough and trusted them enough that I actually made tons of candles with them, right? I made entire lines of candles using these dies, and now those are part of that recipe, right? So I'm going to be continuing to use these dies, at least in those products. So right now I'm kind of split between two different dies, and I know that's not ideal, and I'm not recommending anyone else do that, but the nature of what I do with this channel and doing testing and reviews, I do use a lot more products and materials than most candle makers will, so it's just kind of par for the course. Would not recommend that for everyone else. I would say try a few dies from different suppliers, and then whichever one you like the best, probably stick with that one just to keep things simple. But as far as are these dies that I would recommend, absolutely. There are a few that don't really do it for me. I wasn't a huge fan of the ivory. The teal and the turquoise, one of those, I can't remember, was a little bit too light, but it also allows you to do some really cool colors. Same with the melon. Overall, the variety of colors is, I think, what is a good selling point for these, because you can achieve so many different colors and different variations that you can make all of your products really unique. And lastly, as a reminder, if you are looking for a product or a material you can add to your products so you can continue to market them as eco or nature friendly, then these might be right up your alley. Enjoyed all the different colors. I love working with colors. It's just fun. And I like the artistry behind using colors with candle making. And again, whether to use dye or not, it's totally up to you. I don't think that either one is really right or wrong. It is a preference. But if you are looking to consider adding colors, then hopefully this video helped you out. And if you haven't considered adding colors, give it a shot just for fun. You may test it and hate it. Just hate even having to deal with it. And I would totally get it. But you might find that you unleash a creative side of yourself when it comes to making your candles that you just happen to really, really enjoy. And who knows? You might also find that it helps boost your sales. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I love making these videos for you, so hopefully you guys enjoy them. In the meantime, check out one of these other videos if you're still interested in watching more candle making videos, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.